Welcome to Graceful Healing, a podcast to get straight talk about healing and living again. My name is Maureen Lake. I'm a holistic health coach, speaker, author, and thyroid disease fighter. Each week, I'll be bringing you graceful conversations to inspire you to seek new ways to hit the reset button to catapult your health and vitality to new levels. Listen in and open your heart to all the new possibilities. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hey, Michelle, how are you doing today?
Hey, Maureen, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm really curious how you've been sleeping this past week since we talked about so many different strategies.
Well, I have had probably the whole spectrum, first of all, because I had a couple of nights. My husband was out of town, which I always sleep better because the bed and the bedroom are cooler, I think, with one person opposed to two. Mm-hmm. And then I had a couple really good nights of sleep, and then I made the less than good decision to make brownies one day for somebody's birthday. And so I kind of overdid it on sugar. So I didn't sleep well that night.
So that really affected you?
I think, well, yeah, it really affected me because I have really been cutting back on sugar for several weeks. Mm-hmm. And I think just, kind of nibbling here and there on the brownies, definitely I had a hard time falling asleep that night, which is not my typical pattern. So the only thing different was the sugar.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So at least I have more awareness. How about you?
I've had a couple of good days and a couple of bad days. And the thing that I'm noticing, and it's probably is really related to sugar also, is if I have a glass of wine or say it was St. Patrick's Day and I had, my Jameson or whatever, just to celebrate. If I have a drink too late in the evening, I find that I wake up numerous times during the night. And I think it has to do with my blood sugar because of the sugar and the alcohol. So I can totally understand exactly what you're saying. I'm not a big sweet eater in the evening or late at night to actually think about calories in from actual sugar, but calories in from the sugar and alcohol I can definitely relate to.
That's interesting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I think once just creating this awareness is going to improve our sleep. That's my theory.
So too. Yeah, because one of the things that has really helped me to be totally aware and change a terrible habit is when I'm cutting my iced tea out for the day. Because I've made that switch and it has been a huge improvement in my life. I'm not kidding. So
wow, that's amazing. And what time do you cut that off now?
Noon.
At noon. Well, that's really good because I think, even if you push back your bedtime, from whatever, 10 to 11, the sooner you cut out the caffeine, probably it's out of your system a lot sooner.
Yeah. And even when I was younger, caffeine has always affected me stronger than it affects somebody else. I've always been aware of the fact that I can't even drink coffee because there's too much caffeine in it. I really pay a price with the shakes and stuff. And I'm noticing with my iced tea, if I have too much, I'm starting to feel the same way I do if I drink coffee. So I'm watering it down more and I'm cutting it off at noon and I feel so much better.
Wow, that's huge. Mm-hmm. And such a small change, really, if you think about it.
I know.
That you can still have it. You just have to cut it off at noon.
Right. Moderation.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, I'm definitely noticing by not drinking any wine at night, I'm sleeping better too. Mm-hmm. And, it's not like I really drink a lot of wine, but even one glass, I think, affects my sleep.
I know. It has to do with the sugar.
Yeah. So that's just a weekend thing. That's all. I just, have to party on the weekends.
There you go.
So I did have an interesting thing I wanted to chat with you about, though.
What's
last week? Well, we were talking about turmeric. Mm-hmm. Remember last week? Mm-hmm. And so I went to Sprouts the other day intentionally to get some turmeric, thinking, that would be a good thing to add into my regime. I was so overwhelmed with how many different products there were just for turmeric. I mean, there must have been 30 different brands.
Oh my gosh.
And not only were there 30 different brands, but then within each brand, you could get liquid or capsules. And so I was just so confused, and there wasn't anybody there to help me. So I ended up getting some of the liquid drops that you put in like 2 ounces of water. And coincidentally, the next day, I hadn't opened it yet. So I had an appointment with my acupuncturist, who is also a Chinese medicine specialist. So I asked him about turmeric, and he said, oh, yeah, it's great. And then I told him the same story. And he told me that capsules would be better if you're using turmeric for inflammation, because the liquid has alcohol in it, and then that would raise your inflammation, which I was totally blown away. I'd never heard that before.
It has alcohol in it? We were just talking about alcohol.
Exactly. So how many of these little things are there out there that the normal person going into a Sprouts wouldn't have any idea? I mean, he basically told me I'd be wasting my money by using that product because I'm trying to get rid of the inflammation. Mm-hmm. So it just made me feel totally overwhelmed and uneducated, basically.
Well, I don't think you should feel that way, because whenever I go into any of those type of stores and there's rows and rows and shelves of the same product, and I stand there looking like I'm like a deer in headlights. Yeah. Because how are you supposed to know anything? And then when you ask the person for help, I kind of look at them and think, well, do you really know what you're talking about? I mean, you're not really a pharmacist, so you kind of just are going by your gut intuition on what to grab and what not to grab, you know?
Yeah.
The turmeric I've always used is just like a seasoning spice, so I've never used the capsules before or the liquid.
Oh, now see, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I know we talked about that, but I didn't remember that when I was standing there in the store. Well, I guess it opens up a great conversation about how do you know where to purchase whatever supplements you're on.
I know.
Like I know last week we talked about kind of avoiding Amazon or maybe even Costco for the quality. Mm-hmm. And I do get other supplements from my naturopathist, and she, I think she does a good job of researching which ones, are more effective than others or more pure, I guess. But for the average person, you read an article and then you just go purchase something that may just be money you're throwing out the window.
I know. It is really difficult to know. And one of the things I personally have to be aware of, just because of my Hashimoto's, is my supplements need to be gluten-free. And I've yet to find anything basically at Costco that qualifies under that. So I'm just really particular because I just need to avoid that. But getting real quickly about turmeric, there's one thing that I do know about it, and which I think is kind of interesting. Like if you're pregnant, you shouldn't be using turmeric.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's safe to use if you're breastfeeding, but not if you're pregnant. And I just find that fascinating. Like, what is it about it that's not safe? But that's one of the things with herbs. I mean, there's a lot of herbs that are safe when you're pregnant, and there's a lot that aren't. And so you have to be aware of that too, and not just take things willy-nilly.
So where would the average person find that information?
Boy, good question. Because unless you know somebody that's really knowledgeable in herbology, or if you have you have this wonderful acupuncturist that's also versed in Chinese medicine. I mean, you just have to really do your homework, and it's not always on the label, and you can't be too safe when you're pregnant, that's for sure, or breastfeeding.
Yeah, good point. So I guess the big thing would be to make sure that you do your research and don't just, read an article and go out and buy that.
Yeah, just assume that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, well, that's really good information. I think that pregnancy and breastfeeding is super important, but also like the Hashimoto's. I mean, would you know that, or does the doctor tell you that to make sure that you look for things that are gluten-free?
Your doctor should be aware of that, because it's really a trigger for increasing the antibodies when you have Hashimoto's. But again, depending on what doctor you go to and how well versed they are in that autoimmune disorder. But I just know myself personally, I have to be really careful with the gluten. And most people that do have an autoimmune have to also. So, yeah.
I guess
one of those things.
You would have that conversation with your medical practitioner about what you need to look for on a label, I would hope.
Right. But, because so much has to do with your gut health, right? I mean, it all comes down to your gut health. So,
wow. I'm sure it can get complicated and overwhelmed feeling like I felt that day in Sprouts for sort of a novice. If you don't have that practitioner in your life, you need to make sure that you find the right person. Yeah. So,
because the thing about like turmeric is wonderful for like depression and anxiety, or if you're having difficulty sleeping, like we're talking about, which often has so much to do with anxiety. But have you found any other herbs that might help with you when you're thinking whether you're anxious or difficulty sleeping or?
No, I haven't done a lot of research, to be honest, but things that I've come across, seems like almost everything says great for stress. And it's like, okay, so stress really is affected by everything and affects, so anything that it almost felt like there was this double arrow. Like if you have stress, try this, and then try this if you have stress.
Yeah.
So I think it's just finding what works for you. But it can be a long road and an expensive one.
Oh, it can. I know. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how about you? What have you found works for you?
It's so interesting going down this road of thyroid disorder. And I know you have it as well, but in trying to go a natural route to heal my Hashimoto's, which didn't work for me, but I'm hopefully on the road to getting there. It's my goal is to get off pharmaceuticals and go back to herbs and supplements. But one of the things that I still take today, even though I started off that way, but I still take today is ashwagandha. An interesting, they call it an adaptogen, which is like an herb, but it's used a lot for anxiety, and it improves the cortisol levels in your adrenal system because it reduces your predisposition to anxiety. And so it really is calming like that whole system that has to do with your stress, your cortisol level, impacting your thyroid, and then also calming the entire system down so you're able to sleep better at night. So I have found that when I take that supplement later in the evening, I sleep better.
Oh, wow. That seems like an easier solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Than not sleeping.
And I was talking to this woman. I was actually being interviewed for this early childhood situation, and she was Indian, from India. And when I was telling her the impact ashwagandha had on the children that I worked with that had ADHD, she was like tickled pink because it's actually from India, this herb. And so she had no idea it was like being used worldwide. Why, I have no idea. She didn't realize that, but she was just like, couldn't get over the fact that it was being used even in schools, as a tool to help with anxiety, and just, it can really reduce the symptoms of anxiety basically. And it's pretty harmless.
Well, that's pretty cool. So what kind of dose do you take with that?
I mean, I take it in a capsule form, about 1,000 milligrams twice a day, but I take it that high because of my Hashimoto's. I know you can, there's dosages of 250 and 500 too, depending on, what you need and your size and all that kind of stuff. But it's just one of the little herbs that's out there that completely harmless. I mean, you can take it breastfeeding, you can take it if you're pregnant. There's no like reasons why you can't take it. And it really works well,
I love that, it's just one of those little herbs that has this, total medicinal miracle effect almost.
I know. It's crazy. There's so many of them out there, and why don't we know about these things,
Yeah, well, because Big Farm, I guess, doesn't want us to know. Well, it's very intriguing. actually researching more about Chinese medicine. It's been around for thousands of years, and there's a lot more to it than we know, I'm sure.
Oh, that's for sure.
So, that's cool. And you mentioned in a different phone call that we had that Devin is actually studying some of that.
Oh, yeah. She's getting her doctorate in Chinese medicine acupuncture, and I just cannot wait to get schooled by her to really, and she's going to be compounding her own medicine using herbs, and she's not quite there yet, but she will be in a couple of years. And
that is amazing.
It really is. Really is. So
wow.
It'll be pretty cool.
Well, I think we're going to have a field trip to a Chinese medicine pharmacy.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to research that.
I've actually been to the one at her school, and it's full of glass bottles filled just with all these different things. I mean, it could like snake skin, monkeys, whatever. I mean, there's like all these different really obscure things that they compound and create whatever it is that you need. So it's pretty incredible. And it all has to do with like your yin and yang and hot and cold and inflammation and not inflammation. And I'm just like not even touching the tip of the iceberg of what it's all about. But it's pretty impactful.
It sounds fascinating. I feel like we're peeling back an onion, because we've started these conversations talking about thyroid, and then we moved on to sleep, and, now we're talking about herbs and compounding. I mean, it's just so many exciting things that, keep unfolding.
I know. And then there's so many things like, I know, like our listeners aren't necessarily still experience having a period or whatever. They might be more perimenopause and menopausal. But when I think about the different herbs that could have helped, like when I had endometriosis or when you had like terrible cramping, instead of just taking that Midol or some type of pain pill to mask the pain, taking an herb that could actually help with the pain, help relieve the spasms and stuff, and not have any of those side effects that sometimes we would get. But there's just so much more information out there now for women. And I don't know.
I do. I wish we had all of these opportunities, I guess, is a great word, or people to talk to. I mean, I think back to, oh gosh, I can't tell you how many years ago it was, but nobody was even talking about perimenopause.
No.
Remember seeing a doctor, and if I look backwards, that's what was going on. But that never came up in a discussion with my gynecologist at that point.
I know. And typically, I mean, my gynecologist was always a man. So why would he even relate to anything,
Yeah, it's just fascinating to me. And I'm so happy that, there's better discussion about that now with women. And whether it's women to women or, men that are gynecologists that now have more of an awareness, it's not always a disease. It's actually part of the cycle of life.
Exactly.
And there's resources. Oh my gosh, so many good resources. And our best one is really each other.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Don't have to go through anything alone. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Well, that's what I love about your podcast is being introduced to so many of these women that are doing great things with exactly this, like finding some way to communicate and sort of live their life differently to help others.
Yeah.
You're doing great work.
I have a quick question, because I don't know why I've never, ever, ever liked mushrooms. Do you like mushrooms?
Like to eat mushrooms?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Certain ones.
So I know there's a whole class of herbs that are mushroom related. And have you ever tried any of those?
Well, it's funny. I haven't tried those in digesting mushrooms, but when we were just talking about the sprouts story, I was remembering that I went into another store, Natural Grocers, when a friend had told me about mushrooms for building your immunity. And I had this, I don't know what the word is. I was totally motivated, I guess, to have every immunity building agent working for me before Jenna's second child was born in December, because when her first child was born a couple of years ago, the day, let's see, she was born at 11 o'clock or 11:30 at night, and I woke up the next morning with probably the worst cold I've ever had.
Oh, gosh.
And I couldn't hold the baby. I couldn't even go in the room. I was like the old-fashioned thing. I had to look at her through the window, which was heart-wrenching for me.
I bet.
And so, and it was like the weirdest thing. So I started asking people, my doctor and also others, like, what do you take for, avoiding colds? And so everybody was telling me about mushrooms. And so I went to Natural Grocers with a picture of something that someone had told me. And, I was like, this is the brand. And actually that young woman at the store, like you described, helped me. And I did get, and I can't tell you the brand now, but it was sort of a spray. You would just spray. And I have not had a cold since, I can't tell you, before I started that. Like everybody, Ed's actually on a second cycle of a cold or upper respiratory thing. I have been so healthy this winter that I guess it's the mushrooms. That's all I can think. It's the only thing I've done different.
Well, I mean, people swear by it, and they even, like, there's even like mushroom hot cocoa. Have you heard about that?
No. I've heard mushroom tea, but not cocoa.
Yeah. I mean, it's like milk, organic milk, of course, and like organic dark chocolate. And then you can put some hot chili pepper or whatever, chili powder in it to make it a little spicy. And then use that reishi mushroom powder and cinnamon sticks, whatever that you want to add to it. And I think it sounds disgusting. But there's so many people that love it. But see, I don't like mushroom taste at all. So
can you actually taste the mushroom when you make it into a tea like that? Or
I have no idea. I have no idea. I would never even, just the idea of mushroom.
Oh, how funny. Because this like spray that I have, which again, there were probably, this one brand, there were probably 5 different ways that you could take it. So there's spray and then the liquid and the capsules and the a million, all these different ways, but there's no flavor of mushroom in it.
Oh, well, that's good. Maybe I'll try a spray.
I know. Well, I can send you the label, picture of the label. Like, that's how I found it. Oh. I did actually see it in Sprouts when I was there too.
That's funny.
But, those are the stories for me that are like, okay, if that's the only thing that I've done different this winter and I have remained cold free, I'll keep doing mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that funny?
It is funny. It sounds just like you too.
Well, there is that point I can't remember if it was today or yesterday, but a conversation with somebody about supplements. It was a very just like, gosh, we take a lot of supplements. Is it really making a difference? Like I want to believe that it really is. But then you hear these stories of, this woman lived to be 104 and doesn't do anything, like she doesn't even go to the doctor.
She never quit smoking either.
Yeah. So like I go back and forth with, is it really effective or is it just in my head? But I'm committed, to, and again, it's a lot of it with the blood work, even the thyroid medication is knowing I feel better, that I wouldn't risk stopping it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I know for myself, if I was to take every supplement that I'm supposed to take, I mean, I literally have a hard time fitting them all in the course of a day because I won't take them all at once. And so I've really cherry picked my supplements. I really have. I've figured out what works. And, I don't know, next time I get my blood work, I'll probably realize that I need more vitamin D or whatever it might be. I can't take everything my doctor wants me to take. It's just really almost impossible for me to do it.
Yeah, I find the same to be true. And just like you said with, you can't really take them all at once.
Yeah.
And then I forget.
Yeah, and like certain ones, like you take your thyroid medication and then you can't take your iron until 4 hours after, or you can't do this until that. And it's like, all right, so I have these set ones that I'm going to take and I know when to take them. But then all the other is kind of like, well, I'll just wait and see what happens next time I get my blood work done.
Yeah, I've experienced that same thing, and even gone in and said, my goal is to reduce the number of supplements or the number of medications. And we've worked on that, but then the blood work comes back and it's like, oh yeah, you really do need that cholesterol, whatever. Or, but I'm like, my goal is thyroid and multivitamin.
Yeah.
If I can, that would be my long range plan.
Right. I know.
So, I think that diet and exercise along with that probably helps regulate everything, but some things are just not going to happen unless we have that supplement or medication.
Exactly, because just the sheer fact that our thyroid isn't working correctly, we're not metabolizing things the same way, and we get depleted in a lot of minerals and supplements. And so we do need to make sure that we're supplementing for those things. I mean, just like my story with my iron and ferritin, I had no idea whatsoever I was depleted, until I had that lab work done. So,
well, and I do think that makes a really good case for having that professional who's overlooking that, overseeing it, not overlooking, overseeing it, because my story was with calcium, like yours was with iron, in that I was taking it, but my body wasn't absorbing it. So I was really, I was taking calcium every day thinking that was the right thing to do. And my doctor was like, you're just wasting your money because your body's not absorbing it at all. So just stop taking it. And, then we worked on some other things. So my calcium levels came up by doing some other things. But it's the constant, you need to get that blood work done every 6 months or whatever it is to make sure that, you are in those right ranges, because there's that drug interaction thing too.
I know. And every time you have it done, it's like, oh, so now I need to do this, but I can not do this now. It's like always juggling act.
Yeah. So, I do feel like it needs to have somebody in charge.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not standing in the line or in the store, deer in the headlights.
Exactly. And the whole point is to become your own best advocate. And hopefully that's what we're helping other women to become too, is gaining the knowledge that you need and moving forward and taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And asking those questions. That's when you talked about Dr. Aviva Ram. And, I think the thing I loved about her book about adrenal and thyroid was not here's how to solve it, but here are the questions you should be asking. And that's what we should be asking, our professional naturopaths, doctors, whoever it is that you see and you trust, to make sure that you're not just randomly making decisions without some guidance.
Exactly.
Great job.
Oh, awesome, Michelle.
I just love our conversations.
I do too. I love your turmeric story.
Yeah, it was kind of classic, I thought, because, here I thought I was being so good, and I learned a lot from it in that moment. I
know. And just to be able to talk to someone that thinks differently, like your acupuncturist / Chinese medicine person, to get the real skinny about it, because a lot of people don't know and would say, oh yeah, take the liquid, it's easier, it tastes better, it dissolves easier, whatever. Yeah. And not even really knowing anything about it and how it can actually cause more inflammation, which is exactly what you're trying to reduce. So
yeah, that was just so fascinating to me, because how would the typical person know that? Well, that's another story, and there's always some more to learn.
There certainly is.
We're prime examples.
Yep. We are guinea pigs.
That's right.
So, thank you so much for another great half hour.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope that your sleep continues to improve.
Oh, you too.
Thank you. I'm thinking that this week I might concentrate a little bit on setting a timer.
Ooh. Let me know how that works.
Yeah, I was toying with the idea, but I think I'm going to make that commitment that when the timer goes off, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've really implemented this week that I have to tell you has worked so well is I'm not watching anything on my iPad. I'm strictly listening to music now.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
That's huge. I know it is really is huge for me. And,
yeah,
and I'm like really enjoying so much, like all these oldies. It's like I don't know. I'm having so much fun listening, but now I'm staying awake listening to the music because it's like, oh, I remember when I was doing this then.
I am so impressed because I know you were just really having trouble with that.
Oh, addicted, totally addicted.
Well, that's a great next step. So you can still have it in your room.
Exactly.
But just can't. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
Well, good. We'll continue on that great journey and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Talk to you soon,
okay.
Michelle. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you can, take a moment and give us a review. And please join the VIP room in Facebook for more discussion and insights. You can find us at Graceful Healing Podcast VIP room. See you there and see you next time.